Long time ago in the ancient kingdom of Umuahia, where the palm trees whispered secrets and the red earth held the bones of ancestors, there lived a family that would become the stuff of legend. The village elders still speak of the Okafor brothers, 3 sons born of the same womb, yet destined for 3 different fates. Their father, Motsi Okafor, had been a respected palm wine tapper who died when the boys were young, leaving behind only his wisdom. A man's character is his destiny. Their mother, Eneni Okafor, a woman of strength and grace, raised them with prayers on her lips and hope in her heart. Emeka, the firstborn, stood tall like the Iroko tree, strong, silent, and deeply rooted. At 32, he had never raised his voice in anger, never lifted his hand against another soul. His farm was modest but blessed, his yams the sweetest in the market, his heart as pure as morning water. The village mothers would point him out to their daughters. See Emeka. That one will treat you like a queen. But Emeka had never felt the stirring of true love. He helped widows with their farms, carried children on his shoulders, and at night, sat alone under the stars wondering if the gods had forgotten to give him a heart that could burn. Brother, his mother would say, plaiting her hair, when will you bring me a daughter-in-law? When the right woman looks at me and sees home, Emeka would reply, his deep voice gentle as rainfall. Chidi, the middle son, was fire and music. At 28, his hands could carve life from dead wood, his voice could make the spirits weep. Every morning, he sat by the river creating wooden combs that looked like butterfly wings, sculptures of dancing women, flutes that sang like angels. The village maidens would gather when Chidi played his music, their hearts fluttering like captured birds. But Chidi loved his art more than flesh, believing that true beauty existed only in creation. Your hands are blessed, the master carver had told him years ago. But beware, artists love too deeply. It will either make you or destroy you. Chidi would laugh and continue carving, not knowing how prophetic those words would prove. Oku, the youngest at 28, was everything his brothers were not. Where Emeka was gentle, Oku was fierce. Where Chidi was artistic, Oku was brutally practical. He had inherited his father's palm oil business and multiplied it tenfold through cunning and ruthlessness. Like the legendary Icam, Oku strutted through Umuahia with his chest puffed out, his voice booming across the market square. I am Oku the lion. My palm trees number in thousands. My wealth flows like rivers in the rainy season. At the palm wine joints, men gathered around him not from love, but from fear and greed. Oku would pound his chest and declare, women are like palm fruits, you shake the tree hard enough, and they fall into your hands. He had married 2 wives already. Each had entered his compound with joy and fled with tears. The first, Ngozi, lasted 1 year before escaping at midnight with her twins. Adiz endured a 6 months of beatings before her brothers came to rescue her. That boy's heart is made of stone, Eneni Okafor would whisper to her neighbors. I don't know where I went wrong. But Oku heard the whispers and laughed. Weakness, he believed, was the greatest sin. And love. Love was for fools. Into this delicate balance of brotherhood came Amarachi, like a storm that changes the landscape forever. She was 28, with skin like polished bronze and arms that could lift what 3 men struggled with. Often young, raised by a grandmother who had died the previous year, Amarachi had known only struggle. While other girls her age played games and gossiped, she had bent her back in the fields, her hands calloused from work, her heart hardened by disappointment. Years had passed watching her age mates marry and bear children while she remained alone. The village tongues were sharp. See Amarachi, still single at 28. Maybe the gods cursed her. Who will marry a woman stronger than most men? She should have been born a man, then she would have found a wife by now. Each word cut deeper than machete blades. Amarachi would return to her empty hut and weep into her wrapper, asking the ancestors why they had made her so strong in body but so unlucky in love. Then her grandmother died, and loneliness became a living thing that breathed beside her at night. "I need a husband," she would whisper to the darkness. "Any husband. Before I die of shame." The day that would change 4 lives began like any other market day. Amarachi had woken before dawn to harvest her yams, tubers so massive that people gathered to marvel at them. "How does one woman grow such giants?" merchants whispered, shaking their heads in amazement. Amarachi ignored their stares, focused only on making enough money to survive another week. The physical work was nothing, it was the emptiness in her chest that exhausted her. Emeka was walking through the market when he heard the commotion. Following the voices, he found a crowd gathered around a woman kneeling beside enormous yams. But it wasn't the yams that stopped his heart, it was her. Amarachi was bent over her produce, carefully arranging each tuber, her movements graceful despite her strength. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and she wiped it with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of earth across her brow. Something shifted in Emeka's chest, like a seed that had waited 32 years to sprout suddenly breaking through the soil. A customer was bargaining harshly, trying to cheat her. Emeka watched Amarachi's jaw tighten as she held her ground, her voice firm but respectful. She wouldn't be bullied, but she wasn't cruel either. Strength with dignity. Exactly what his heart had been searching for without knowing it. When a heavy basket proved too much for an elderly customer, Amarachi immediately offered to carry it to her home. No payment expected, no recognition demanded, just kindness. Emeka had seen enough. He approached quietly and bought the largest yam without haggling over price. "Sister," he said gently, "your work honors the gods. These yams are blessed." Amarachi looked up, startled by the genuine warmth in his voice. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the bustling market faded away. She saw no mockery in his gaze, no pity, only respect and something else she couldn't name. "Thank you, brother," she replied, surprised by her own breathlessness. Emeka nodded and walked away, but something had passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. For the first time in months, Amarachi smiled genuinely. That night, Emeka sat by his window, unable to eat, unable to sleep. The image of Amarachi's face was burned into his mind like a brand. This was love, not the gentle affection he'd felt for others, but something that grabbed his soul and shook it awake. The next day, Chidi was returning from the river where he often went to find wood for his carvings when he passed through the market. He was searching for the perfect piece of mahogany when his artist eye caught something more beautiful than any wood could ever be. Amarachi was bargaining with a cloth merchant, her gestures animated as she explained why his prices were too high. The afternoon sun caught the angles of her face, the elegant line of her neck, the proud set of her shoulders. Chidi's hands, always steady, began to tremble. Beauty, true beauty, was what he'd spent his life trying to capture in wood and song. And here it stood before him, alive and breathing and laughing at something the merchant had said. Without thinking, Chidi pulled out a small piece of wood from his bag and began carving, his hands moving with desperate precision. He carved her profile, her smile, the way her head tilted when she was thinking. People began to gather, watching in amazement as Amarachi's likeness emerged from the wood. "Master Chidi," someone whispered, "that's beautiful. Who is she?" But Chidi couldn't answer. He was lost in a trance, his heart beating like the drums at harvest festival. When he finished, he approached Amarachi with trembling hands. "Sister," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "accept this small gift." Amarachi stared at the carving. It was her own face, captured with such love and skill that it seemed ready to speak. No one had ever seen her as beautiful before. "Why?" she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "Because," Chidi replied, "some things are too beautiful not to be preserved forever." Their hands touched as she accepted the gift, and Chidi felt lightning run through his veins. This was it, the great love that would either create his masterpiece or destroy him completely. That night, Chidi carved until his fingers bled, creating an entire collection of Amarachi's faces, laughing, thinking, sleeping, dreaming. His hut became a shrine to a woman who didn't know she had captured his soul. 3 days later, Oku was riding through the market on his finest horse, fresh from collecting debts from farmers who could barely afford to feed their children. His chest was puffed with pride, his voice already preparing to boom out his usual boast about wealth and power. But then he saw the crowd and curiosity made him stop. "What's all this noise about?" he demanded, still on his horse. "Amarachi's yams," someone explained. "Look at the size of them." But when Oku pushed through the crowd, it wasn't the yams that caught his attention, it was the woman who had grown them. Amarachi was lifting tubers that should have required 2 men, her muscles flexing beneath her wrapper, her movements efficient and powerful. Oku's mind immediately began calculating. This wasn't beauty that would fade with time, this was investment that would multiply his wealth. A woman this strong could walk his largest farms, bear him sons as powerful as themselves, and never break under pressure. Perfect, he murmured to himself. Absolutely perfect. Unlike his brothers, Oku felt no tender stirring of the heart, no recognition of souls connecting. He felt ownership, the same satisfaction he'd felt when he'd acquired his most profitable palm groves. He studied her for several minutes, noting how other customers treated her with respect born of her reputation for fairness and quality. The entire village seemed to know her name. Good, that meant his acquisition would be noticed, envied. "You," he called out, his voice cutting through the market chatter. "Woman with the yams." Amarachi looked up, annoyed by his imperious tone. "My name is Amarachi." "I don't care what your name is," Oku replied with his characteristic arrogance. "I want to buy all your yams. Name your price." The market fell silent. Oku's reputation preceded him everywhere. His wealth, his pride, his treatment of wives. People began to back away, sensing the danger that always followed him. Amarachi, however, wasn't intimidated. She dealt with difficult customers before. "The yams are priced fairly," she said calmly. "You can buy what you need like everyone else." Oku's eyes flashed with surprise. No one spoke to him with such casual dismissal. Instead of anger, he felt a thrill of challenge. This one had spirit, it would be interesting to break it. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, stepping closer. "Should I?" Amarachi replied, continuing to arrange her produce. The crowd gasped. Oku threw back his head and laughed, a sound like thunder rolling across the mountains. "I am Oku the lion," he bellowed. "My wealth could buy this entire market twice over. My palm groves stretch to the horizon." "Then you should have no trouble paying my prices," Amarachi said dryly. More laughter from Oku, but this time it held a dangerous edge. He bought her entire stock at double the asking price, his eyes never leaving her face. "I'll be back," he promised, his voice low and intense. "We are going to know each other very well." As he rode away, the market buzzed with worried whispers. Everyone knew what it meant when Oku the lion showed interest in a woman. But Amarachi just counted her money and shrugged. She'd dealt with arrogant men before. What she didn't realize was that she had just sealed her fate. Emeka understood that love couldn't be forced or bought, it had to be cultivated like the finest crop. So he began his courtship the way he did everything else, with patience, consistency, and genuine care. Every morning, before dawn broke over Umuahia, Emeka would leave fresh produce at Amarachi's door. Not expensive gifts that would overwhelm her, but thoughtful ones that showed he noticed her needs. Vegetables when her garden was struggling, palm oil when her supply ran low, medicinal herbs when she'd mentioned feeling tired. Each gift came with a simple note written on banana leaves: "For your strength, may your day be blessed, from one who sees your worth." At first, Amarachi was puzzled. Who was this secret admirer? She would peer around her compound at dawn, trying to catch a glimpse of her mysterious benefactor, but Emeka was too careful to be seen. The gift continued for weeks. Slowly, Amarachi began to look forward to these small kindnesses. In a world where everyone expected her to give, here was someone who asked for nothing in return. One morning, she woke earlier than usual and caught sight of a tall figure placing a bundle of firewood by her door. She watched from her window as Emeka arranged the wood carefully, ensuring it would stay dry if it rained. His movements were gentle, respectful. He could have simply dropped the wood and left, but instead he took care with even this small gesture. Emeka, she whispered to herself, recognition dawning. From that day forward, she began leaving her own gifts, a bowl of fresh soup, newly harvested palm nuts, a calabash of cool water for his journey home. Neither spoke of the exchange directly, but a conversation began through kindness. When they encountered each other at the market, their interactions were soft, respectful. Emeka would ask about her grandmother's grave he'd heard she visited daily, inquire about her health, offer to help with heavy loads. Never pushing, never demanding attention, just being present, reliable, safe. Amarachi would sometimes read her Bible to him, and they would both laugh at their childish attitudes. Amarachi found herself thinking about him more often. In a world of loud, demanding men, Emeka's quiet strength was like cool water to a parched throat. When she was exhausted from farm work, she imagined his gentle hands massaging the ache from her shoulders. When the village gossips whispered cruel things, she pictured his kind eyes reminding her of her worth. He would never hurt me, she would whisper to herself at night. With Emeka, I would be safe. But safety felt too simple, too easy. Surely love should be more dramatic, more overwhelming. While Emeka courted with consistency, Chidi poured his soul into creating beauty for Amarachi. Every piece of wood that passed through his hands became an offering to her, combs carved with butterflies, because he'd seen her watching them in her garden, bracelets etched with yam vines, honoring her farming skills, mirrors framed with scenes of village life, showing he valued her place in their community. But more than the gifts themselves, it was the time Chidi spent that spoke of his devotion. Each carving took days, sometimes weeks. His fingers would bleed from the intricate work, his eyes strained from carving by lamplight, but he never stopped. The most beautiful piece was a sculpture of a dancing woman, not specifically Amarachi's features, but her spirit captured in wood. The figure's arms were raised in celebration, her face tilted toward the sky, her entire being radiating joy and strength. It was how Chidi saw Amarachi, how he believed she deserved to see herself. He would bring these gifts to her personally, his heart hammering as he explained each piece. I saw you watching the birds this morning, he would say, presenting a flute carved with wings. I thought you might like to call them closer. Amarachi was overwhelmed by the artistry, the thoughtfulness, the pure beauty of what Chidi created for her. No one had ever seen her as worthy of such effort, such skill. Each gift was a poem written in wood, a song carved in silence. Why do you do this? She asked one evening as he presented her with a wooden bowl so beautiful it seemed almost too precious for food. Because you deserve to be surrounded by beauty, Chidi replied simply. You've worked so hard, sacrificed so much. Let someone give back to you for once. His words made her weep, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, truly seen, by someone who understood the weight she'd carried. But alongside the gratitude came fear. Chidi's love was intense, all-consuming. She could see it burning in his eyes, feel it in the trembling of his hands when he passed her his creations. This was the kind of love that demanded everything, and what if she couldn't give everything in return? He deserves more than I can offer, she would think, running her fingers over his latest carving. Someone pure, untouched by bitterness. Someone worthy of such devotion. While his brothers wooed with gentleness and artistry, Oku attacked Amarachi's resistance with the same brutal efficiency he used in business. He understood that she was practical, desperate, tired of struggling alone, so he offered solutions to all her problems. First came the money. Not subtle gifts like his brothers, but overwhelming displays of wealth. He arrived at her compound with bags of cowries, boats of the finest cloth, jewelry that glittered like captured starlight. "You never work in the fields again," he promised, his voice booming across her small yard. "My wives live like queens, fine clothes, servants to cook and clean, children who will inherit vast wealth." Next came the prestige. Oku made sure the entire village knew of his interest. At every gathering, he would announce, "I am courting the famous Amarachi, the woman whose yams are blessed by the gods. When she becomes my wife, our children will be giants among men." The village buzzed with excitement and envy. Amarachi, who had been mocked for her unmarried state, suddenly found herself the center of attention. Women who had whispered cruel gossip now smiled and called her sister. Men who had ignored her now bowed respectfully. "See how they treat you now." Oku would laugh. "This is what my name brings: respect, fear, honor. You'll never be pitied again." But it was the practical arguments that hit hardest. Oku had done his research. He knew about her struggles, her loneliness, her desperate need for security. "You're 28, he would say bluntly. "How much longer will you wait? For what? Love?" He would laugh harshly. "Love doesn't fill empty granaries. Love doesn't silence cruel tongues. Love doesn't give you children before your womb dries up." His words were cruel, but they struck the fears that lived in Amarachi's heart. She was tired, so very tired of fighting alone. "Look at my wealth," Oku would continue, gesturing at his fine clothes, his horse, his servants. "Look at what I can provide. Your children will never know hunger, never know shame. Isn't that worth more than pretty words and wooden trinkets?" Unlike his brothers, Oku never asked what Amarachi wanted, he told her what she needed. And in her exhausted, desperate state, his certainty was almost comforting. At least with Oku, there would be no more guessing, no more hoping, no more disappointment. "He's offering everything I've prayed for," she would think. Security, status, an end to loneliness. What more could I want? But at night, when his booming voice faded and his overwhelming presence was gone, doubts crept in like shadows. She remembered the stories of his previous wives, the tears in their eyes as they fled his compound. Could she really be different? Could she really change him? "I'm stronger than they were," she would whisper to herself. "I can handle him. I can make this work." For weeks, each brother courted Amarachi in his own way, unaware that they were competing with each other. The truth came out on a market day when fate, or perhaps the mischievous spirits, arranged for all three to arrive at the same time. Emeka was delivering his morning gift of fresh fish when he saw Chidi approaching with a carved jewelry box. Both brothers stopped in surprise, then noticed Oku's horse tied to Amarachi's fence. Inside the compound, they could hear Oku's booming voice, "I've decided to make you my fifth wife. The ceremony will be magnificent, the entire kingdom will attend." The gentle brother and the artistic brother exchanged horrified looks. Their youngest brother, the one they'd watched become cruel and selfish, was trying to claim the woman they both loved. "We have to talk," Emeka said quietly. Chidi nodded, his face pale with shock and anger. That evening, the three brothers met at their childhood spot by the river where they'd once played as innocent children. The Iroko tree that had sheltered their games now witnessed their first real conflict. "How long have you been courting her?" Emeka asked directly. 2 months, Chidi replied. "You?" "The same." Both looked at Oku, who was lounging against the tree trunk with his usual arrogance. "Courting?" Oku laughed. "I don't court women. I acquire them. I decided I want her, so she'll be mine. Simple. She's not a palm grove you can buy," Emeka said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Isn't she?" Oku shot back. "What do you two have to offer?" "You, Emeka, with your small farm and gentle words. And you, Chidi, with your wooden toys and pretty songs. I can give her everything, wealth, security, status. What can you give her? Dreams. Love, Chidi said fiercely. Respect. A partnership instead of ownership. Oku's laughter was harsh. You think love will feed her when she's hungry? You think respect will protect her when she's old? She's a practical woman, she'll choose security over sentiment. You don't know her, Emeka said quietly. If you did, you'd know she deserves better than to be treated like property. I know exactly what she is, Oku replied coldly. A desperate spinster who'll jump at the first real offer she gets. Watch and learn, brothers. Watch and learn. The three parted that night in anger, each convinced he was right, none understanding that they had just set in motion the tragedy that would destroy them all. Word spread quickly through Umuahia that the three Okafor brothers were all courting the same woman. The village buzzed with gossip and speculation. Poor Amarachi, how will she choose? It's like a story from the old days, three brothers fighting over Helen of Troy. I bet she chooses Oku, women always go for the wealthy one. But Emeka is so kind, and Chidi is so talented. Doesn't matter. Security wins every time. The pressure on Amarachi became unbearable. Everywhere she went, people stared and whispered. Some offered advice, choose the gentle one. Others placed bets, Oku will win, he always gets what he wants. Even worse, the brothers began competing more openly. Emeka's gifts became more frequent and elaborate. Chidi worked day and night creating masterpieces. Oku increased his displays of wealth and began making public declarations of his intentions. Amarachi felt like a bone being fought over by three hungry dogs. The attention she'd craved for years now felt suffocating. She couldn't step outside her compound without being reminded of the impossible choice she had to make. Why can't they just leave me alone? She cried to her grandmother's grave. I just wanted one husband, now I have to break two hearts no matter what I do. But the ancestors offered no guidance, and the pressure continued to build like storm clouds gathering for a devastating downpour. Finally, Amarachi could delay no longer. The entire village was holding its breath, waiting for her decision. She sent word to all three brothers, come to my compound tomorrow at sunset. I will give my answer. News spread like wildfire. By the appointed time, half the village had gathered outside her fence, pretending to go about their evening chores while actually waiting to witness history. Inside the compound, the three brothers sat in a semicircle before Amarachi. She had dressed in her finest wrapper, her hair braided with palm oil until it gleamed, her face composed but pale with the weight of her decision. Emeka sat with quiet dignity, his hands folded, his eyes gentle and patient. Whatever her choice, his face said, he would accept it with grace. Chidi clutched a small wooden carving, his final gift, created in desperate hope. His leg bounced with nervous energy, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Oku lounged confidently, already certain of victory. His chest was puffed out, his gold chain glinting in the firelight. He'd even brought a bag of bride price, anticipating immediate acceptance. I have thought long and deeply, Amarachi began, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Each of you has shown me kindness in your own way. Each of you has qualities that would make a good husband. She paused, gathering courage for what came next. Emeka, you have shown me what gentleness looks like. Your gift asked for nothing in return. Your presence made me feel safe, valued, respected. With you, I would have peace. Emeka's eyes filled with hope and terror in equal measure. Chidi, you have shown me beauty I never knew existed. Through your eyes, I saw myself as worthy of art, of time, of devotion. Your love made me feel special, chosen, treasured. Chidi leaned forward, his breath catching in his throat. And Oku. She turned to the youngest brother, you have offered me everything I thought I wanted, wealth, security, an end to struggle and shame. Oku's smug smile began to widen. But, Amarachi continued, and that single word changed everything. I have lived long enough to know the difference between what I want and what I need. I have been lonely, yes. Struggling, yes. But I am not desperate enough to trade my soul for security. The silence was deafening. Outside, the hidden villagers strained to hear. I choose.